Hello, everybody. Good evening and greeting from beautiful and sunny United Kingdom. I hope you all had a great week and I hope you're ready for more photography fun. Now, if you've never been here before, my name is Jacob and I am a professional photographer based in West Sussex, England. And during the next 20 minutes, half an hour, we're going to be looking at your pictures. I'm going to give you some feedback. And usually the way it goes is I look at the technical part of the image where I review your camera settings, and then the image itself. And we look at things like exposure, sharpness, and so on. After that, we look at the artistic part of the image. That's where we talk about composition, colors, main subject, storytelling, and everything like that. And finally, at the end, if we have a time, and I think that there is a reason to, I give you some tips and tricks on how you could edit your image to get the most out of it. If you never watched the show, you should also know that we're using Luminar Neo as the software for editing and reviewing the images. However, most of the things I'm going to be talking about when it comes to editing can be done equally in applications like Lightroom, Photoshop, Affinity Photo, On One, or anything that works for you. So this is out of the way. This is what we're going to be doing. We have some beautiful pictures in front of us. And before we start, just a quick reminder that if you want to join us for the next episode of our photography review show, all you need to do is to jump onto our website, cleverphotographer.com/membership, sign up there, get our monthly digital tool bundle full of great tools. And on the top of it, you also get access to our Clever Photographer Academy on Facebook, and you get access to this photography review show. You can send us images every week, and every Monday at 6 p.m. UK time, you can join us live, or you can watch it in a review on our platforms. We broadcast it on YouTube, Facebook, and Facebook group, the Clever Photographer Academy. So we had a few technical challenges earlier, but I think that everything is working. I think that we all good. Looking at the comments, we have Zdeněk with us already. Good evening and greeting to South Africa. If you are watching live, make sure that you leave us a comment on any platform you're using, and say hello, say where you're watching from. For those who are watching on replay, thank you very much for joining us. So we have three sets of photographers, starting with Donna and her landscape images. Let me just zoom in so you can see the picture rather than me. That should be nice and easy. And we start. So we have two beautiful pictures here. Stunning capture of a beautiful Milky Way with some rock formation in front of it. That's gorgeous, this capture here. So beautiful, beautiful capture. And then the second image, again, here, beautiful capture, beautiful structure with really a clever way of highlighting the size of the rocks with putting a person there. I think also really lovely image. So let me just close this and put it aside, and now keep focusing on the images. So starting with the Milky Way, let's have a look at the camera settings. This was captured with the Nikon Z6 with the lens 14 to 24 millimeters f2.8, and from the camera settings we are on ISO 4000, 14 millimeters f2.8, and 25-second on the shutter speed. So ISO 4000 for this night photography, probably about right. 14 millimeters, obviously, for the nightscape like this, as wide as you can go is the goal. So that's good there. F2.8 also give us a really nice balance for the shutter speed. So then when we zoom in with the 25-second, everything looks really nice, except there is a tiny bit of like a star trail. You can see how they almost moving, and this to do very much with the setting of your camera. It's basically a calculation between your f-stop, the lens you're using, the 14 millimeters, and then you end up with the calculation for your shutter speed. So I think you would have to have gone a little slower, not slower, little faster, in order to avoid the star trail. Anyway, either way, it's a beautiful capture. I really, really like it. The Milky Way is very dominant there. I think it's looking great. The rocks also look very, very nice with the lovely texture on it. Obviously, it is a little bit noisy, and with that much ISO, you do lose a little bit of details. However, still, it's very clean. I really like how it looks. The light is nice, the colors are nice, and overall, I think it looks very good. So the only thing, Donna, I would pick on is probably the initial setup, where I think you getting just a slight bit of the star trail. You can see it, how the star is basically moving and how it creates this trail. So that's about it on this one. Artistically, it's great. As I already mentioned, the sky is beautiful. The foreground element with the rock is great. The composition with the 1/3 of the ground and 2/3 of the sky works really well here, as well as positioning of the rock on that kind of lower third. I think all of it works really well. The balance of the light is great. The white balance is really nice. And as a story, I think it works really, really well. So Donna, well done on this image. Superb, excellent result. And make sure that you keep shooting the nightscape. I think you really manage very well here. Which brings us to the next image. So image number 2, we are looking at the rock formation. Again, jumping quickly at the camera details. Same camera, so Nikon Z6, with this time the lens is 24 to 70 millimeters, f2.8. And from the camera settings, this time we are on ISO 100, 24 millimeters, f13, and 1/125th of the second. So for some reason, we are back. From the camera settings, I think you spot on there, ISO 100, nice and low. Always the suggestion, try to keep it as low as possible to make sure that we don't add any additional digital noise. So ISO 100 is spot on. 24 millimeter is usually around as wide as I go when it comes to wide landscape photography. If I need to go wider, then often I use panorama composition together, because once you go a little wider, specifically on elements like this, you start to get really distortions. So it's good to avoid that. So 24 millimeter is great. F13, making sure that you have a sharpness all the way through. Let's have a look. It's all looking good to me. Obviously, with the JPEG, is it JPEG? Yeah, with the JPEG, there is a little bit of loss of the details, but in overall, it's looking good. And 1/125th of the second, just giving you nice overall exposure. In overall, it's a lovely picture. Once again, I have mentioned that I like the fact that there is the person there, which gives us a really nice sense of scale. I think that works really well in composition. When you place a person or an object that human recognize, then it really gives you an idea on the size of what we're looking at. So this was really smart. On the opposite, if I would have to pick something, it's a shame that the shadows are a little bit harsh. And obviously this was probably kind of midday or maybe later afternoon, where you still have kind of harsher light on the top and darker light in the middle. On the other side, I really like the fact that there is some nice texture on the sky behind. And in overall, it's lovely. There is lots of texture, clarity, which works really well. Mix of nice colors, which are not too overwhelming. And I think in balance with the sky, the blue and white, it works quite nicely together, creating really interesting capture. So I think artistically it's really lovely. And once again, I'm really happy about putting the person there, because that is something what we often forget, and it helps us to recognize the overall scale. So Donna, I love this image. Well done there. Now, when it comes to editing, I think it's nicely done. Obviously, when it comes to a daylight photo, there is only certain things you can do. What I would maybe try as an additional photo, I think this works really well. You're showcasing the whole rock. You could also try to crop it a little bit further. For example, with something like 16:9, and really just kind of avoiding the whole top, even putting the person on this lower third, on the kind of golden point here, and then you get another whole set of impact here. Obviously, you're losing the top, but it's just another way to maybe edit the picture and get something more out of it. So if I would kind of crop it even more, because I don't want any sky in it, you could end up with something like this. After that, you could put little bit of a vignette on the image to kind of close the edges. Nothing crazy. You don't want to go crazy like this because that's not natural at all. However, I think just somewhere around maybe minus, let's say 50 works really well. And then maybe push even more clarity. So here in Luminar Neo, it's called structure, but in Lightroom, it's clarity slider. And here, just bring in the amount slider up and you get a little bit more details and texture standing out. So I think that would be another way of how you could look at it. Of course, that you could play around with the colors of the sun in order to get the best possible result. But I think this is interesting too. Either way, Donna, both of them are great captures. The night sky is awesome, really, really lovely capture. And this is also very interesting. Once again, with a little different crop. Yes, you're missing the shape of the main rock, but then it gives you really full impact on the view through and just kind of give you a different framing and different proposition. So that's that for Donna and her image here. And we're gonna move on to the next one. We have two images from you. Flower photography, which is a great subject for this time of the year. Obviously, we just passed tulips time here in Europe. My friend Rene from Netherlands went several times, obviously, to see the tulips field. It's a great photography subject. We also just passed the season for the forest pictures, for the forest flower pictures here in UK. All the beautiful bluebells are gone now, but the season is always so exciting to go out, especially when you go early in the morning, enjoy a little bit of the mist with the bluebells. That's also great. And yes, I think there are still flowers around. So if you have your camera and you're looking for a subject, head out and enjoy it. Take a sheet of paper with you, or sheet of something that can diffuse the light, and then just have a fun with flowers. It's a lot of fun and it can be really creative. So from David, we have two flowers. First one right here, beautiful, beautiful capture, lots of stunning color in it, lots of details, captured with the iPhone, actually, iPhone 11. So that's a picture number one. And then second picture right here, again with iPhone, this time iPhone 14 with this little bit contrasting image, but we will talk about it just in a moment. So let's start with the first picture. Once again, this one captured with iPhone. Looking at the camera setting, it's not always really that important, especially for phone captures, because they work a little bit differently than on DSLRs. Anyway, still, it's ISO 32, f1.8, and 1/344th of a second on a shutter speed. Now, looking at it from the first point of view, for a camera capture, actually the details are quite nice. You see a little bit of softness on the edges, which could be also done through editing. You see fair bit of noise in a darker part, and there is just a kind of tiny bit of softness in it. Also, it's missing like a really crisp sharpness. You get a quite decent sharpness in the center, but after that, you lose a little bit. But still, for a capture on a phone, I think it's really, really pretty. So the colors are great. There's lots of kind of structure and clarity on it. The square crop works nicely. The light is very nice. So there's not really a super harsh light or super harsh shadow on it, which works really well. And actually the contrast of the flower color, of the flower with the background works really nicely here too, which kind of nicely brings us to the artistic part of the image, which is really nicely done. Once again, David, just keep an eye on the edges. I think even with a capture like this, you want to have a little bit more space on the sides, just not to completely suffocate the flower. I'm all for doing a real close-up and really picking the flower and zooming in. However, always have just a little bit more, just from kind of my own personal experience. If you would want to go ahead and print the image, sometimes you may be really close, and then you when you put it in a frame, you're really, really close, and then maybe you lose part of the image. So always keep a little bit more. I would say something around down here, that's about maybe a little bit more than down here on all sides. I think that really kind of give a little bit more breathing space to the subject, and it helps. So that would be my first thing. Second thing, when you kind of sit back on your chair and look at the image, you can really see how too strong is the vignette. I'm a huge fan of vignette. I think it's a great tool and a way how we can guide a viewer's eyes. However, I think this is a little bit too strong and it looks unnatural. So when you're working with flowers, yes, you can do lots of editing on them, but as much as you can, you want to stick with the natural results or natural looks. And when you look at it, especially from a little bit further, so let's say that I would have it on a phone and had it a little bit away, I would see the vignette a lot. So less on vignette next time and a little bit more space on the sides would be my comments on this. In overall, when I keep looking at the image now for the last 2-3 minutes, it's really saturated, so my eyes actually starting to hurt a little bit. So that would be maybe one more tip, just a little bit lower on the saturation if you could. I don't want you to remove it, I don't want you to change the overall picture, but just what I do, one trick I do, because I'm also really bad at applying too much saturation, is I take the slider down until it's not nice at all. And then without looking at the slider, I just look at the image and then keep bringing it up. And when I start to like the image, that's where I stop. And most of the time, when I then look back at the slider is actually lower than the 0. So I already think that at this point, it's really nice. I don't think it needs more saturation. And look, we have removed -14 on the saturation slider. And now, on the top of it, when I reset it, you will see how oversaturated it is. So this is a great trick for everyone with the saturation, when you're adjusting saturation on images that are like this, and they feel a little bit oversaturated. Once again, you take the saturation slider, you bring it down until it's really unsaturated. Then you keep your mouse on the saturation slider, and then you look at the image. You don't look at the slider, you look at the image. And then you keep bringing the slider up, and you only bring it as far as you like it. So once again, somewhere around here. Then you release it and come back to your slider, and you see, again, we are around -19, maybe -16, and we still have a really nice result. So sometimes our eyes get they get distracted with the sliders. We have certain numbers in our heads already. We think, oh, -16 is too much on saturation. But actually, for the result, I think it works a little better. Once again, since we're already here, I would brighten the edges a little bit, which we can just very kind of quickly do here. So it's just a little more brightness on the edges. Let's see, maybe even more. And we actually get really nice result that way. So something like this, before and after, and maybe even a little bit more on the edges. Now I can't remove completely the vignette, but I can do as much as possible. So then this is the before and this is the after. Little bit more natural, still lovely result. So coming back, we have second image right here, and we will actually follow up on the first example. Again, coming back to the natural look, coming back to the vignette, and coming back to the contrast. So when you look at the image and when you step back a little bit, you can immediately see how the flower is way oversaturated. Then the background is way too dark. Also, it's darker on one side than the other, and then everything else is soft. So that's already, by looking at it, first example of how unnatural it is. When you zoom into the top, again, you see how even some parts of the flower are a bit too dark and they look like almost like burn. And on top of it, learning from the first image, you can again see that the flower would need a little bit more space on top of it to breathe. So main subject, when you're using it in a composition, and when it's such a main subject like this, which is really the main part of your story, needs a space around it. At least the amount you have here on the sides, you would want on the top. You need the human eyes to be able to focus on it, to have a look at it. You don't want it to be bouncing around the edges. So that would be my suggestion. So for this image, more space on the top, less brightness on the main subject, less darkness on the background. That would be my main suggestions there. The details are quite nice. Another thing, looking at it now when I zoom in, is also the light is a little bit too harsh here. And again, it's even more highlighted by the brightness of the main subject, where on this one, the light is actually really nicely diffused. On this one, the light is really, really strong. So again, something to work with. So, David, what would you do? You would just brighten the round, make the subject a little bit darker, maybe even just by simple bringing down of the highlights. Look, highlight slider down. It's already looking so much better when you look at it before and after, maybe even more again before and after, and then brightening the around. Now, darkening slightly the background to create more contrast between the main subject and the background is a good idea, but again, very gently. So that would be for this image. Now, looking at the comments quickly, Tony, thank you very much for joining us. I hope you had a great week. Thank you for joining us for another video. Zdeněk is with us, and we're gonna be moving to his pictures. Zdeněk, all the way from South Africa, where, as far as I know, we heading towards winter now. So we are on the other side of the world almost, and hence we leaving behind Zdeněk's captures of antelopes and elephants and all that, and rhinos, and we moving towards flowers. So let's have a look at it. Let's start with this one right here, which is beautiful, beautiful capture. Starting with the camera settings, Canon M6 with the 50 millimeters 1.8 lens. Looking at the camera settings, ISO 200, 50 millimeters, f22 1/10 of the second. Zdeněk, looking at the image, if I'm right, you replace the background. It's just slightly visible, but it's not too bad. Actually, it works very nicely together, but maybe I'm wrong there, but it looks like that. But looking at the image, following the camera settings, I think you quite well done there. 200 on ISO is good. F22, obviously trying to get as much details all the way through, so that's good. 1/10 of the second. If you use the studio light, it's probably a good setting. The light is quite nice, maybe a little brighter on this side, but that gives us a nice depth. So in overall, it's actually quite lovely. Lots of details all the way through. Once again, nice little drops around with a little bit here as well. So that all works really nice. Now, when I look at it first, I really like it. I like the overall feel. It's very playful. I like the texture, the mix of the white with the pink works very well. Now, the background is interesting. Again, maybe if you would have gone for something a little bit still natural, but I think red, pink, and orange together, maybe if you would try more kind of earthy combination of the background, maybe it would look a little bit differently. Nothing necessarily wrong. It's just that the separation seems to be really strong on the two colors. So that's when you look at it for the first time. Other than that, as a composition, again, what I was telling to David, just keep an eye on the edges, not necessarily for where the flower is coming from, because that's how it is. It's coming from the side, and obviously it needs to come from somewhere, but maybe just these areas, a little bit more space will help. In overall, I think, for example, this leaf here, I would just remove it. I think it just brings a little bit of distraction to our overall subject. I know it's there, but I would just remove it. I wouldn't kind of leave it there. I would just focus on the flower. I think the way it's there is quite nice. The only thing is that obviously, because you're using the f22, when I look at the image, I think it's almost over sharp all the way through. We get it's just missing a little bit of a depth. For this type of photography, I'm not a huge fan of this really blurry soft backgrounds and soft focuses, but I think just tiny bit of depth would actually help. So next time I would play with the f-stop, adjust it, and see if you could maybe get like most of it in focus and just a little bit of the background soft, which I think again would help to then add the background together. So you would have your flower in a focus, then a little bit softer, and then it would nicely blend into the background. Now, so that's this one. When it comes to post-processing, well, you could maybe apply a little bit of dodge and burn just to create more depth on it. Let's see if we could just very quickly do that. Starting with a little bit of more contrast, maybe would be the beginning, then close it, open it again, and this time do a little bit of burning, so darkening with the brush with low strength, maybe just picking up the areas that we could darken. So this part here, maybe this part here. I always just follow the darker parts that are already on the image anyway. I'm not creating anything new. That would be a different kind of photography, but just kind of following the darker parts and creating more contrast, which helps us with the depth, really, I think. So something like this, and then I close it, open it, and then we're gonna do some brightening again with brush. And this time we're gonna be just painting over the areas we want brighter. So definitely here, I think definitely here. Again, on the top of the flower. This is just very rough idea, but it gives you an idea of what we're trying to do. Something like this. And by doing that, I think that we will get a little bit more depth. Let me have a look. Before, how it's kind of flat. After, how it's a little bit stronger. If you would want to even increase the depth with the contrast, here in Luminar Neo, there is a really cool tool called Super Contrast. And you can find it all the way on the bottom in a professional section. And you can actually adjust the contrast specifically for highlights, midtones, and shadows. So not just one contrast slider, not just one contrast slider. You have 3 sliders which adjust different parts. So I usually start with the midtones, see if that helps. But I think for us, maybe the highlights. Let's have a look. Highlights neither. So shadows maybe just a little bit, and then a little bit of the midtones. Once again, let's have a look at it before and after. I think it's a little better. And finally, we're going to do the same test as we done with Dave's photos, and we're going to do the saturation. So saturation slider down to half until it's well too undersaturated. And now not looking at the slider, going up until I like the result. So somewhere around here, I think. So we are on -12. Now let's have a look at the before and after, and I think this is more than enough. To finish it off, little more vignette. But this time, not only the vignette, but also use the inner light, so to get more light in the middle. So that's about it. Let's have a look at it. Before and after. I think it's a little bit better. It adds a little bit of depth, texture, and clarity to the image, and make it a little bit more interesting. So Zdeněk, that's the first image. Let's have a look at the second one. And on the second image, it's a lovely flower. Let's have a look at the camera settings. Canon 600D with the 85mm lens, f1.8. Now from the camera settings, ISO 100, 85mm, f16, and 1/200 of a second. So ISO, spot on, 85mm, so nice punch in there. F16, again, giving us a really nice level of details, and 1/200 of a second, giving us nice light. Now, I almost feel like we're talking about similar pictures here. Obviously, this one captured with Canon camera. However, similarly, again, I think a little bit of extra space on the edges would help, especially down here. Second thing is, when I look at it, let me just make sure that I'm on 100% brightness. When I look at it, immediately I can see how the main subject is really bright and the background is really dark, which once again isn't an issue, but it just doesn't look very natural. So I wish the background would be just a little bit brighter, just to kind of blend it together. So it doesn't look like you have taken a picture of the flower and then just kind of stick it on the background. It should look natural. It should look natural. Also, this flower, although it's obviously giving us a really nice sense of depth, I think because of its shape and how it's kind of soft and blurred, I think it's actually a little bit distracting. So when I look at the image, in the first view, the human eyes usually gets attracted by contrast. So I look at the image, that's all good. That's obviously where your eyes get attracted. And then the second thing, I get attracted by this flower here, which is really soft and really bright compared to everything else. So it's a little bit distracting. So I don't know if maybe I would go for lower f-stop so we can see a little bit more of the shape, or if I would have tried to make it a little darker so it's not that obvious, or if I would have just crop it so I just see the flower there. I'm not sure. It's just a few different things you could do. Other than that, the light is nice. It's nicely soft. The sharpness is nice. It's also a little bit warm. So I tell you what, let's take the image, let's bring it into edit module, and let's start first of all with the white balance. If we could maybe adjust it a little bit by going into the color, and let's see if we could just make it little cooler. Nothing crazy. Again, maybe just somewhere around maybe -10. With the tint, it's quite green. So if I push it towards the pink, not too much, but maybe just somewhere around 10. That would be here. Again, similarly, we're going to go into the saturation, bring it down, and then up until we like the result. So I think just somewhere around here, or maybe here. So -6, -5. Let's have a look before and after. So far, maybe a little bit of extra warmth here. Now, after that, we can close this here. We can quickly jump into the color where we help ourselves a little bit with the remove color cast. Unfortunately, it also removes some brightness, but I think it helps a little bit there too. Then I would just like the shadows to be a little bit brighter. So for this, we come back to develop again and go into the shadows and make them a little bit brighter, just a little bit. So that way, the background looks a little bit more natural. Let me show you before and after. I think that's a little bit better. Now, we were talking about this part that we would like to remove it. We're not going to remove it, but let me just quickly show you when I crop it to 1:1. Let's say that we go somewhere around here. How it's going to help just to focus on the main subject, but we don't have to do it, but it's just an idea then how to get radius of that. And finally, I think maybe just a little bit of dodge and burn again with a little bit of extra exposure with the brush, strength on somewhere around 50. And again, just painting on the center of the flower. Yep. And then close it and open it, and then darken part of the flower again with the brush, and again something like this. So this time I'm gonna just darken the edges a little bit more, so something like this. So let's have a look before and after. Just give you a little bit more depth with a little bit of extra structure, maybe a little bit more details, and that's about it. So Zdeněk, these would be some of the tips, tricks, some of the things I think you could do with the image. From myself, again, a little bit brighter background, lower f-stop to get more details there or not have the flower there at all, and a little bit more breathing space around. That would be my idea. Play around a little bit more with the dodge and burn, and maybe some local adjustments like extra structure just on the specific part of the image. That all will help as well, I think. So just a few tips and tricks there. And that's about it. Beautiful two captures, Zdeněk. Thank you very much for sending them over. Make sure that you send us more. We will be back again next week. Same go for David. Thank you so very much for sending your photos. And Donna, thank you for sending your photos too. Folks, that's it for this week. I wish we would have more submissions for this. So again, the dates and links are already available on the website in the member zone, as well as on the Clever Photographer Academy. If you don't have them, just shoot us an email to info@cleverphotographer.com. We can provide them to you, of course, and we would love to see your images. Now we are almost at the end of May, as I say, when it comes to photography. Still, forest photography is great at this time of the year. Also, it's quite nice to go out and shoot some nightscape pictures. I have a few friends who are traveling around England now, and the results are beautiful. The sunset isn't that late yet, and sunrise is quite early already, but not that bad neither. So it's a great time of the year to go and shoot, especially here in Europe. In South Africa, you will still have to manage to get through the winter, but even in the winter there are things you can photograph, just like the flowers, some nice product things. There's just lots you can do. So if you have any tips and tricks, make sure you share them with us. For today, thank you very much for watching, folks. You have a lovely evening, great rest of the week, and make sure that you come back to us again next week on Monday, 6 p.m. of a UK time. Take care, stay safe, and bye-bye.